Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second Asia Pacific GNI Innovation Challenge Town Hall. My name is Irene Liu, and I'm the News Lab lead for the Asia Pacific region at Google. We're really excited to be able to talk to you about the Innovation Challenge. And with me, we have Ludo and Sarah, who will introduce themselves. If you guys want to wave and say hello.
Hi. I'm Sarah. I work on the GNI Innovation Challenges and look after the people who are applying and the people that are receiving the funding. So nice to meet everyone.
Thank you very much for hosting us, Irene. Thanks everyone for joining. I'm Ludovic. I'm the head of GNI Innovation, and I'm leading the GNI Innovation Challenges program. We have no more than 20 people attending. We know that others will join. So this is great. What we want to do is just to take the opportunity to walk you through the GNI challenges, because as you know, we are opening a new call for project in the region, and we want everyone to understand how it works, so you can just take the opportunity to apply. It's all about stimulating innovation, all about creativity. So it's going to be about 20-minute presentation. I will explain you the high-level principle of the challenges. Then Sarah will take some inspiring examples, and we will explain you also how we are reviewing the project, how we are assessing the project, and then we will take your questions. So be ready for questions, and we start with the presentation now.
Right. Actually, if I could just jump in the live chat, if you have questions while you are listening to the presentation, please feel free to just go ahead and start typing your questions into the live chat. After the presentation portion is over, we will read aloud those questions and put Ludo and Sarah in the hot seat. So definitely start typing away here.
And we have now almost 25 viewers, so it's growing. Thank you very much for joining this. So the GNI Innovation Challenges program with an S, we are now speaking about challenges because we started about 1 year ago in your region in Asia Pacific. We've prototyped a call for project for News Innovator, and the idea was just to be open abroad around a specific topic, a specific theme, and to ask for creative ideas. We launched about 1 year ago the round one in Asia Pacific. Yes, you can change slide, Irene, please. So we started in your region about 1 year ago, and the call for project was around readers' revenue. How can you generate more revenues coming from readers, from the audience, right? And it has been really interesting to see the diversity of projects. I will explain you right after, but because we really saw the traction, the interest for it, we decided to just go global. So thank you very much, because the success of the first round of Asia Pacific pushed Google to make this GNI challenge a global program. So now we are having challenges to stimulate innovation in North America, in Latin America. At the moment, we are reviewing applications from Middle East and Africa for the first time ever. And as committed, we are back to Asia Pacific. So let me step back a little bit and talk about round one. So round one, again, was about readers' revenue. And we were amazed first by the diversity of the application. We received 215 applications from 18 countries in the region. At the end of the day, after an in-depth review process, we selected 23 projects from 14 countries, but the more interesting is to see how diverse were the proposal to tackle this challenge of readers' revenue. When we think about readers' revenue, you can have the feeling that the answer is paywall, paywall, and paywall, but it was not just that. It went way beyond just the paywall. We had projects about gamification. We had projects about dynamic pricing. We had projects about membership, loyalty program, churn rate reduction, increase of consumption of news. We had a conversion program. So a diverse, very diverse range of ideas. And trust me, it was very hard to make a choice. And we also got the feedback from many of you that the application process in itself, even if not selected, help you to kind of frame your idea, go in depth through it, and define better your vision. At the end, we selected again 23 projects in 14 countries, and we start now seeing the progress. And this is something we're going to share in the year to come, because the project selected all committed to share the learnings and the knowledge of the main lessons of their project. So now let's go to the next slide, and what makes the reason for our hangout today. We are very proud and very happy to announce the launch of the second round of the Google News Initiative Innovation Challenge in your region, again in Asia Pacific. One thing before digging into the specific theme of this round, and we can go to next slide, I really want to underline and to repeat again and again that this challenge is open to everyone. You can be an established newspaper, you can be a new startup, you can be online only player, a local and regional newspaper, a broadcaster, anyone can apply. We are really looking at the idea, and the diversity is a very, very important component of the stimulation process, right? So really, it's open, it's broad, think big. So what is the second round about? The second round will be all about readers' engagement. We want creative projects that are tackling the challenge of creating new forms of engagement with readers. Why did we do that? Because readers' engagement means many things that help you to strengthen, to go deeper in your links with the audience. And it can capture many different ideas. It's in some way broader than just readers' revenue. It can go with creation of new revenues, but it can go also with just an increasement of the consumption, new way to engage the conversation, and new way to build relationships with your audiences. And we want to see your ideas around that. So let me be a bit more specific. Next slide, please, Irene. So what do we mean here? We are looking at any kind of ideas of project to make the users more interested in your content offer, more actively engaged, more passionate about what your brand is offering in terms of content consumption. So any ways to increase the time spent on your website, to increase the number of page view, to increase the loyalty, or to find way to maybe gamify or engage better your readership. And the effort of your project can be focused on, again, a huge diversity of topics, from subscriptions, membership, or any way to transform members into, to transform the audience into a member or a subscriber. So it's not just about payment, it's about any way to increase the relationship with your readers, to increase the value of the brand. Any kind of new digital product, of new features to increase the interaction and to deepen the relationship with the audience will be eligible as well. So it can be about community management, it can be about user-generated content, it can be about building more trust. So it's really a broad topic, and there is a lot of room for creativity in there. So the range of projects can be really varied, but let's be clear, this is not clickbait. We are not just expecting to have projects that will increase the numbers of page views without any value. So it shouldn't be a kind of fake increasement of the time spent and pages, but a real enhancement of the relationship with your readership. Now I'm gonna give the floor to Sarah, and Sarah will share some inspiring examples.
Hi, thanks, Ludo. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some projects that involve reader engagement. And by showing you some of these, you'll see this sort of great variety that could fit into that category. But I should say this isn't kind of a menu of things we want to see. This was a different region. This was in Europe. So things are going to be slightly different there, obviously. But I hope it would just give some inspiration about what can be done in terms of what we see as reader engagement. So I'm going to start first with a project which comes from Ireland, from ERA, the Republic of Ireland. And they have a very long established newspaper there. But they wanted to engage better with their diaspora audience. Ireland's obviously a very small place, and a lot of people go and migrate across the world, and they wanted to find a way of engaging with those people. So they came up with a simple idea that it would be a special section that was carried online that would allow people to connect, and they'd be able to monetize, and they'd have a deeper connection with them. What they've ended up with is this, what they call Irish Times Abroad. It's a detailed database of more than 35,000 highly engaged readers in 140 different countries worldwide. They've built up big social media followings. They now have basically a working relationship with journalists around the world who are interested in Irish diaspora issues. So as well as being able to monetize these people as members of this club, of this Irish Abroad Club, they can also get great input into their content for any incident that happens worldwide that might have an impact on their Irish diaspora. So that's the first example from the Irish Times. A second one, again in Europe, all of these are European examples, but this is very different. This is in Spain, where the news organization wanted to find a way to easily engage with people on the ground while the reporters were on the ground. This is kind of rural area, it's kind of dispersed area, and they felt they needed to be able to be in touch with their readers right there at ground level. So they came up with two things, two softwares. One is what they called a hyperlocal listener, and the other is the community manager. And as it sounds, the listener was really looking at all the things people were doing in the hyperlocal area. So there's local sports reports, the news, things that are going on in the community, and brought that to the local reporters. Whereas the community manager was the software that enabled them to do that. So they found that this was a really good way of engaging with 11 million unique users that news organization had, but in a completely different way to the way they had done before. I'm going to talk about a completely different organization. This is from Belgium, and it's from a financial publisher. Now, the financial publisher's got a long history of leading, leading the way in monetizing digital content. Obviously, they're slightly different from a local news organization in that way. They basically wanted to find a more granular way of dealing with their members and subscribers. They have digital subscribers. They expect daily updates of sort of key market information, things that are important to financial decision making. But they found that really one way that they could engage better with them was to automate a certain amount of that material and then be able to use the reporters in a better way and create new newsletters and really drive subscriptions and raise consumption of their project. And they also found it increased conversion as well. A nice side effect of this, wasn't their primary aim, but a nice side effect of this is that it saved their journalists up to 30 minutes a day that they could spend doing bespoke niche content and present them in a better light in that way. And I think this is the final example I've got to give you. And this is from the Netherlands, and it's from an NGO. So we've had a local newspaper, we've had a financial publisher, we've had a big national newspaper. This is something different, an NGO. They wanted to involve their readers in their investigative journalism. So their site is called Follow the Money. So as it sounds, it enables people to look at where money flows and find out good stories as to what's happening with it. But they decided to gamify the whole process so that their reader, member, user base could come along and be part of that investigation, but didn't have to train to be journalists. They could involve themselves in a sort of gamified approach to it. This app is up and running, but I'm afraid you have to speak Dutch to understand it, but it's driving their community and has given them also a bit of a media literacy angle, because they're able to actually explain to people what's involved in investigative journalism. So it's been a really worthwhile project for them. So I hope those ideas inspire a little, but we'll now talk a little bit more about the criteria for when you apply as well. So how this all works, basically, you'll see from the website, it gives you greater detail on this, but you'll see that Google funds up to $250,000 US for a project. But the actual project should be at a value greater than that, because Google only supports 70% of the overall costs. Okay, so we don't need every application to be $250,000. It can be any amount up to that. So if you've got a small project, it's still worth applying to this. It's not just for those sort of larger projects. Google funding will cover lots of eligible expenses. So personnel, your engineering work, equipment costs, marketing expenses to a limit, a lot of things. But it won't be covering your editorial cost. Obviously, as a news organization, that's something you're already covering. So the Google project money doesn't cover that. We say to you that really we want a maximum, it's one application per legal entity. But in the cases of a very large organization, we could take a maximum of 3 projects from your group. We're looking really for just 1 project per brand. Okay, if there's any questions on that, we can go into greater detail shortly. I'm afraid applications have to be submitted in English. Okay, so if we go to the next slide. Just to sum up what we're looking for, the project should be specific around online news. Obviously, it is a news innovation funding, so that's what we're looking for, things around online news. We say the main component should be digital. That doesn't mean the only component has to be digital, but the main one. So it could be a mix of broadcast, of print, but somewhere in there has to be digital, and the digital is our focus of attention. And then finally, the focus can be just from your organization or collaborative. It's one of our big aims with the Innovation Challenges to inspire some collaboration with others. So we're very supportive of collaborative projects. You could be a collaborator with another news organization, with a technology company, university, individuals that are just interested and inspired by the news space, whatever it is. We're very keen to hear from collaborative projects, but you can also simply apply from just your one organization. Just to save your time and make sure that you know you're understanding the limits of this, these are things that are not eligible. We won't be looking at projects that are only about content creation. So you may have a great idea for a new niche in topic terms that's not being covered elsewhere, but that's not for us, I'm afraid. We're looking for things that are tangible about reader engagement. We're not looking to upgrade legacy publishing systems, creaky old CMS. I'm afraid you have to kind of find that elsewhere, because that's not for us either. As I said, this call is very much about reader engagement. We also don't fund training or education programs. That's things you know, that are happening in a classroom, things that are workshops that are put on that then bring people up with digital technology training and things like that. That's not for this particular fund. There are many other funds for that. We do need to see some evidence of a monetization plan for your reader engagement program. That's what it's all about. We want to see how you let us know how that's going to work for you. And we don't back pure research, and by that we mean the kind of academic research that's going on in many other places and many other funders for. Obviously, with all innovations, there is an element of research, but we're not funding pure research. Okay. So how do we judge the things that come in? And as you've seen from Ludo's presentation earlier, we had more than 200 applications that came in for the first round of the Asia Pacific call. Every single one of those applications is viewed and is, I'll go a little bit more detail in a minute about who views them. Every single one that comes in is reviewed by more than one person. And what they're looking for is, first of all, the impact that that project might have on the news ecosystem. So not just on the applicant, but also on the news ecosystem more generally. How might it have an impact? It might be that it provides great learnings. It might provide something direct of impact and obviously we want to see it have impact on reader engagement. We'll be looking also at how innovative it is. Now, we deliberately don't define innovation. That depends where you are on your journey, and we take that into account. But we ask you to tell us why your idea is innovative, and it's one of the things we look at during the assessment process. And we're looking also, obviously, to see how you're going to use technology in that innovation. We then look at feasibility. Is it something that can be done? And are you the best people to do it? And how do we judge that? We ask you to tell us how you're going to measure and how you're going to follow this project, how you're going to manage it, how you're going to deal with it, how you're going to judge its success. We look at that for feasibility. And finally, and importantly, it's certainly not the least of this list, we look for how inspiring your idea is. Will it really sort of give something back to the news community? Will they be inspired by what they see? Will they be tempted towards their own innovation? Will they be able to learn from it? And we ask you how you will share the learnings that you get from this project with everybody else in order to engender that inspiration. A little bit on governance. There's two stages. The first stage, when all the applications come in, is, as I say, they are all seen, and they are seen by our project team. You can have a look online to see the full names, but Ludovic and Irene on this call are both members of that project team. They will look through them all. They come up with a shortlist. That shortlist is interviewed, and then we look at basically things that we want to hear more about. After those interviews, there's a final shortlist produced, and that goes to what we call our jury. And the jury is a bit like a second chamber, if you like. It's a mix of Google executives and industry experts. They're independent from the project team, and they vote on the final decision for the projects and the final funding decisions. Okay, I'm going to hand back to Ludo in a second, but I'd just like to point out that you can, obviously you apply online, you apply with an online form, but you can download it ahead of time, and I'd really recommend doing that. Have a good look through the questions, prepare your questions, you know, on a separate document, so you could literally copy and paste it into the form when it comes to the time. We try and keep it as straightforward as possible. We try and keep it as simple as possible, but there is a certain level of detail there. It's important that you give some time to working on this. Talk to your teams, talk to your collaborators, really kind of, you know, get a brainstorm going on this so that you get the full idea down on this application form, because that at the end of the day is what the assessors are going to see. And that may be the only thing they know about you. So it's well worth downloading and working on it ahead of time. With that, I wish you good luck, and I'll hand you back to Ludo and look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And I cannot agree more with what you say. Just go online, take time to read carefully the terms and conditions. I'm going to share here tips for applicants, which are basically a repetition to what you've said, Sarah. And I want to repeat it again. So go online, look at the terms and conditions, but more important, read in depth and carefully the frequently asked questions. Then, as Sarah said, you go on the application form, and even if I'm really digital, I will recommend you to print it in a piece of paper. You take your piece of paper, you put it in the printer, you print the application form, and you start going through it with your colleagues. And you will see that the real opportunity is this period of time where you can just step back from the daily operation, break the silos, and work with other teams to build a vision around one specific project. And selected or not, you will, I'm pretty sure, learn a lot during this process, and that will create the real stimulation, and maybe other ideas will come out of this project. So again, go on the website, read carefully, and start working on your application. The project you're gonna submit shouldn't last for more than 1 year. We expect the completion to be done in 1 year. As said, collaborative projects are really welcome. Any kind of collaboration can work. You don't have to come with a collaborative project, but we really like it because it's part of the stimulation. Always think about including clear indicators in your project, so you can send an email after the submission of the application form. You send an email to APAC GNI Challenge at google.com, and you can attach any indicators you want. So expectation in terms of audience, any metrics, business plan when relevant, any indicator is useful for us, and also tell us in depth about who you are, who is the team behind. Think about the impact on the news ecosystem, and really describe how do you plan to share the learnings, what you would have to share with the ecosystem. We also really always recommend you to submit a presentation of about 8 to 10 slides explaining exactly what is your project. So the presentation should start by what is the real problem you are trying to tackle, how do you plan to tackle it, why your project is different from what others have done, so a kind of benchmark, some indicators, and with the team behind, what are your expectations? So already having a presentation submitted with your application also help a lot for the assessment. No funding would be available for pure content creation of research, so it cannot be just about content. Editorial costs are not eligible on the GNI funding part, so you can factor into the total budget. So I remind you that we are funding up to 70% of the total cost of a project. So editorial can be part of your 30%, but we are not funding that. And training and education program are not eligible. Quick look at the timeline. So next slide, please, Irene. So we've opened the application window on October the end of October, and we're going to close the application window on January the 7th. We already received email asking for, and by the way, there is a typo on this slide, so it's not December 7, it's clearly January the 7th, so after the holiday season, the winter break, the Christmas break. So we receive some email asking for a bit of an extension. We cannot extend, right? So it's going to be already end of first week of January. And why? Because we've just learned through all the calls of project we've done that there is never a perfect duration, and people tend to work anyway last minute. So we've decided to give much more time than for round one. It's more than 2 months. My recommendation is don't wait for the last minute to start working on it. If you fill the form pretty last minute, that's fine. We are used to that. We would prefer you to fill it before, but that's okay. But don't wait to start iterating, brainstorming, and coming with your ideas and reading all the information. Last slide, as a reminder, we are always very happy to answer questions. So don't hesitate to reach out. APAC GNI Challenge at google.com, APAC GNI Challenge at google.com. We always answer within 48 hours. So don't hesitate to ask questions, to ask specific questions. We are more than happy to get back to you, and all information on our website, g.co/news innovation. And now we're going to take your questions.
Great. Thank you so much. We have a few questions from the chat. So Peter from New Zealand asked, what does Google want in return for the funding opportunity?
Okay, I take the first one, and Sarah, you will take the second one then. Someone needs to start. So what do we want? Honestly, I'm going to be very straightforward here. What we want is to stimulate innovation, and what we want is to have creative projects. So it's really about creating the spirit of innovation and giving room to test new ideas. This is not Google's project. It's not about Google product. This is your project. You own, all recipients own the IP, and they are totally responsible and free to develop their project as they want. The only thing we are requesting are the following. First, we want to make sure the money is going to the project. So we follow up the project. We give 50% of the funding before the project starts. And then we have one milestone where we check the expenditure and the progress of the project. And then we have another installment and tranche of funding, and you can continue the project. So we want to keep the relationship and offer along the way opportunities to share the knowledge at industry events, through use cases and stuff, but this is really your project and you are free to use Google product or not. This is really your call, your decision, you own the IP.
Great. We have another question from Glenn who asks, this is a very specific question about budgeting. Does the marketing cost, which is capped at 20%, include a salary for sales, or is that considered separate?
Okay, I'll take that, Glenn. So marketing costs are capped at 20%. That's 20% of the funding received from Google. Okay, so just to make that clear. So what do we mean by marketing? You've also got budget lines of personnel, obviously. So in terms of salespeople, it depends where you put them. Marketing, we wouldn't necessarily think of as people, but more as the activities. So what marketing is going on? Are you buying advertising? Are you putting up outdoors? You know, whatever marketing activity that you're producing, that would have to be within the 20% of the Google funding. So yeah, I hope that's clear, but the personnel involved in it could be different sorts of people.
Yeah, I really think that the marketing is more the promotion of the product, which is really important. How you're gonna go, how it can help to have a go-to-market plan, how you can promote it. And the salesperson, if you don't really have it in the company, maybe it might be relevant to put some salesperson in personnel, but most of the time we don't really expect salesperson to be included in. But if it's relevant, I would recommend more to put it into personnel than into marketing.
Great. We have another question from Damien, and he said, is Google interested in specific groups of readers? For example, readers in Asia Pacific versus global readership?
So the answer is, ask the question to yourself. The project should be coherent and consistent. We are not in your shoes, and this is not us telling what we are interested in. We are interested in projects that make sense for you, that will deepen the relationship between a specific publisher brand and the audience. And it's you to explain us why your approach with the specific group of readers you want to engage and to deepen the links with is relevant depending of who you are. So it's a very good question to ask to yourself, but we don't want to be prescriptive.
It's perhaps just worth adding on to that, that the organization making the application needs to be based in Asia Pacific, but the communities you serve could potentially be elsewhere. But the organization itself needs to be based in Asia Pacific region, and the countries that are covered by what we're referring to as Asia Pacific region are all on the website as well.
Great. We have a question from Damien. Again, could you provide some good examples of how other organizations have shared their learnings?
I can't really kind of provide them in this format, but because what we're doing is some people are producing things like white papers. Some people are producing things like videos. Some people are producing sort of documents to help us. And some people are standing up on stage and presenting their ideas and sharing their inspiration. So people are coming up with all sorts of different ways that they're going to share that. So obviously we will try and amplify what they're doing as much as we can. That is the point after all, that they're trying to share that knowledge. So keep an eye out. And as the first Asia Pacific people kind of start completing on their projects, we'll be sharing a lot more. But when it comes to filling in the applications, what we're looking for is you to tell us how you're going to share that knowledge. Those are just a few ideas. You know, but it could be anything. You could have a new idea that we'd love to hear about.
Yeah, and to that, we will along the way offer opportunities. So for example, we can be in touch and say at this industry event that is not necessarily a Google event, they are looking for interesting projects about subscription, about how did you reduce the churn rate, or how did you improve the number of subscribers to a specific niche product. And we would get back to you and put you in touch and ask you if you want to share some learnings of your projects. We would also might be in touch to suggest that you participate to an event we are doing just to connect with other news innovators. Something I can recommend you is to have a look at the blog post we've done when we launched the second round of the GNI Challenge in Asia Pacific. Irene did an interview with a project in India where she asked some questions about innovation, about their project. This is an example of knowledge sharing. You can also have a look on GNI website. You will find a specific section about the GNI Fund, which is the fund we've done in Europe to stimulate innovation during the last 3 years in Europe. And you will see in there a lot of use cases. You have video examples, you have reports underlining some interesting part of specific projects. So there is a lot of inspiration there, and that's a good example of the opportunities you might see along the way.
Great. We have a very great question actually from Peter Fowler, who asks, you referred to engagement with, quote, readers, but is listeners okay, particularly if it has a strong digital element?
Yes, listeners, viewers, engagement is in many ways. So I love when we are asking for you to be innovative and you are pushing us into these kind of questions, because yes, innovation, diversity are keywords here. So of course, listeners, viewers, more than welcome.
Great. We have another question. Could the marketing component fund a stand at a big media conference to promote the product?
Well,
do you want me to say? Yeah, it could, but again, we want to know why. You tell us what you're going to get from this stand. So you tell us where it's going to be, who's going to see it, why you're doing it, how you're going to measure the success of it. Make the case for it, basically. We want to hear your marketing ideas, but you need to tell us why that's the best way of doing it.
Great. So if I would encourage anyone else who's on the call to please, if you have any questions, we will stick around for a few more minutes, but thank you so much to New Zealand. We had many questions from down under, which is fantastic. I guess a question for Ludo and Sarah. I mean, are there any other tips or recommendations that you have for the applicants?
Sarah.
I mean, on a very practical front, I'd say get your teams together and talk through your ideas as soon as you can and start documenting them, and do download the application form ahead of time. So a very practical one from me.
Yeah, and very practical one for me is really do a presentation slide. 8 to 10 slides presentation is really useful. It's useful for you to walk through your idea and really go more straight to the point and clarify it. It's really useful for us to understand it better. And my second recommendation is really think from a user perspective. This is about readers' engagement, think from a reader's perspective, not just what do you want to achieve, but what will be the value for them. I think it's super important. And one last thing I want to underline is a question we have pretty often about the language. Applications are in English only, but I really want to make super clear that this is not about assessing the quality of the English. This is not an academic essay here. So feel free to use Google Translate or any translation tool as much as you want. We will really look at this. We won't challenge you at all on the language. So really take this easy. We are doing English only in every region, and we recommend you not to see this as an obstacle.
Great. Well, I think we are near time, so thank you all so much for joining us at the town hall. Thank you, Ludo and Sarah, for answering all the questions and giving that fantastic presentation. And do reach out if you have questions about the application process. Please definitely go to APAC GNI Challenge at google.com and also hit the website g.co/news innovation, because there is a very comprehensive FAQ. And any question you have will likely be in there somehow. But if for some reason you don't see the answer, definitely reach out to us and we will get back to you. Thanks all very much again for joining. Thank you, Ludo and Sarah, and have a great evening. Take care.
Thank you very much, Irene. Thank you very much for this, and thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you and good luck.